Was it merely a routine custody agreement or the beginning of one of the most dramatic power shifts in the modern history of the House of Windsor? On February 8, it became clear that an institutional earthquake lay hidden behind a seemingly formal custody deal. What initially appeared to be a routine legal matter between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle developed within hours into a crisis that called into question not only a marriage, but the very foundations of the monarchy. The trigger was a leaked statement by Prince Harry in which he explicitly invoked the Royal Guardianship Protocol. This term alone made observers sit up and take notice. This rarely used instrument allows the Crown to intervene when the welfare of minor royal children appears to be at risk. Prince Harry's public reference to such a protocol was interpreted as a signal in London. He was no longer prioritizing his partnership with Meghan Markle, but rather the institutional security of his children. The timing was critical. The last confirmed public appearance of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle together was on December 18, 2025, at the Global Impact Awards in Los Angeles. Insiders described the appearance as strained and almost mechanical. Behind the scenes, a legal reassessment of the family situation was reportedly already underway at that time. Shortly thereafter, the picture began to take shape. In California, Prince Harry is said to have retained the renowned divorce lawyer Laura Wasser, a name that carries weight in high-profile custody battles. According to reports, his team filed a petition for sole custody of Archie and Lilibet in the last week of January. The central allegation was that Meghan Markle had increasingly neglected her parental responsibilities in favor of international business ventures. Internal documents circulating in legal circles allegedly point to Meghan Markle's extended stays in Dubai and Doha. Additionally, email correspondence from Archwell Circle was reportedly presented, in which new media projects unrelated to the children were planned. School formalities in Santa Barbara also became a focus of debate after reports of unpaid fees and sudden withdrawals surfaced. As the public discussion gained momentum, the palace reacted with unusual speed. On February 2, a legal notice confirmed the reactivation of the Royal Guardianship Protocol under exceptional circumstances. Princess Anne, considered the guardian of institutional discipline within the royal system, was authorized to cooperate with the Family Division of the High Court in the UK and the California Superior Court, based on the Winter California Reciprocal Protection Accord of 2024. The consequences were immediate. Archie and Lilibet's British and US passports were frozen. Commercial contracts featuring their names were suspended. Internally, it was emphasized that minor children should not be subjected to monetizable narratives. Within days, the children were discreetly moved to a protected environment near the Sandringham estate. These steps marked a turning point. For the first time since the so-called Maxit, Prince Harry visibly sided with key figures such as Princess and Prince Edward and Queen Camilla. Observers registered a quiet but significant shift in loyalties. Prince Harry no longer appeared as an isolated dissenter, but as a participant in an institutional process. At the same time, legal activity intensified in California. Led by Miles Armitage, a comprehensive statement was filed, identifying emotional distance, strategic business decisions, and international travel plans as risk factors for the child's welfare. An alleged tip from Lilibet Diana's Montessori teacher was also mentioned, a detail that further fueled the emotional debate. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle did not remain idle. Her legal team, led by Sherry Tilden, announced countermeasures and spoke of an overreaction. But the more documents were released, the more public perception shifted. Polls in Great Britain, Canada, and Australia signaled growing support for structured institutional oversight. In Windsor itself, Princess Anne appeared remarkably determined. Strategic options were examined with the involvement of Prince William, Catherine Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge, as well as the Lord President of the Privy Council. Diplomatic channels in Washington, D.C. were informed. Sir Malcolm Bentham internally issued instructions regarding the special treatment of royal minors abroad. What unfolded was more than a divorce drama. It was a show of force by an institution long considered weakened. The custody agreement became the catalyst for a comprehensive readjustment of the Windsor strategy in the face of modern media realities and globalized brand interests. At the end of this first act, an open question remained. Was it a legitimate protective mechanism for the well-being of Archie and Lilibeth, or the beginning of a harsh institutional reckoning with Meghan Markle? Had Prince Harry, with his decision, taken a step toward personal liberation, or irrevocably submitted to the system he had once sought to leave? The coming days would reveal whether this custody deal was the prelude or already the foundation for a historic rupture within the monarchy. Was this the moment when Prince Harry definitively switched sides? Observers in London and Los Angeles are now openly speaking of a turning point. Not only in the relationship between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but in the strategic direction of the entire monarchy. What began as a legal action developed into a symbolic show of solidarity with precisely those institutions that Prince Harry had publicly criticized after his withdrawal from royal duties in 2020. At the heart of it all was a 47-page filing with the Santa Barbara Family Law Court entitled Declaration of Protective Intent for Minor Heirs of the House of Windsor. Submitted by Miles Armitage, the document painted a picture of a father no longer willing to tolerate family decisions driven by brand strategy. The argument was based on Meghan Markle's repeated trips abroad, including to Dubai and Doha, as well as internal planning documents for a project codenamed Project Emancipation, which aimed to reposition her as an independent businesswoman. Simultaneously, it emerged that Prince Harry was also relying on the support of Laura Wasser. This personnel decision was seen in legal circles as a clear sign of escalation. Laura Wasser is known for her expertise in highly complex custody cases involving assets, public perception, and international jurisdictions. Particularly noteworthy was the reference to an alleged 2020 agreement in which Meghan Markle supposedly committed to adhering to the Windsor Custodial Monitoring Protocol. If this clause were indeed valid, it would grant the palace considerable leeway. In this context, Princess Anne's role also gained further significance. As head of the Royal Custodial Oversight Committee, she is said to have prepared internal scenarios months in advance, a concept known internally as Protocol St. George. While Meghan Markle, through her legal team led by Sherry Tilden, dismissed the reaction as excessive, diplomatic activity intensified. Sir Malcolm Bentham, Under-Secretary of State for Sovereign Affairs, instructed the British Embassy in Washington, D.C., to consider the special constitutional status of the Windsor minors. The basis for this was Section 14 of the 2017 Royal Heirs Treaty, which allows for the protection registration of royal children abroad. A strategic meeting took place at Clarence House between Prince William Catherine Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge and the Lord President of the Privy Council. This resulted in two actions: a prepared public statement from Catherine offering moral support for the children, and the authorization of a Royal Council submission to the British Embassy in the United States. These steps gave the proceedings an international dimension that went far beyond a typical divorce. Prince Edward and Sophie Duchess also became more prominent. Sophie Duchess appointed a neutral mediator, while Lady Louise Windsor was discreetly sent to the United States to prepare a report entitled Windsor Horace, a Transatlantic Safeguarding Review. This coordinated activity indicated that the conflict had long since been waged at the institutional level. At the same time, the public debate intensified. A poll conducted on February 10, 2026, showed a clear shift in favor of structured institutional oversight. Even in California, a narrow majority expressed understanding for limited involvement of the Crown, provided it served the child's best interests. Media outlets that had previously been favorable to Meghan Markle began reporting more cautiously. Another detail reinforced the impression of a strategic realignment. Prince Harry appeared unannounced at Clarence House on February 9 and was photographed entering the sovereign wing. No camera crews, no branding, no external accompaniment. This image was interpreted by many as visual confirmation that he was consciously aligning himself with the institutional structure. However, at its core, the legal issue was about more than symbolism. The application did not immediately aim for full custody, but rather for a structured institutional guardianship transition. With this, Prince Harry opened the door to formalized shared responsibility for the Crown, a step that effectively ended the couple's private autonomy. Princess Anne responded by calling an extraordinary meeting of the Sovereign Guardianship Advisory Council in Sandringham. The submission of an amicus curiae letter by the Crown and the development of a British education and care plan for Artie and Lilibet were agreed upon. The official focus was on stability and psychological support. Critics accused Prince William of using his temporary acting sovereign authority, which King Charles had granted him in December, for political gain. Supporters, on the other hand, argued that precisely this institutional unity was necessary to prevent the further commercialization of the children. The line was drawn. Prince Harry had positioned himself not only legally, but strategically. He placed the children's welfare above media narratives, business models, and personal loyalties. At the same time, he opened the door to a stronger role for Princess and Prince William, and Catherine, Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge in their children's lives. Was this an act of responsibility or the beginning of a complete reintegration into an institution he had once described as restrictive? And would Meghan Markle accept this loss of power or launch an even more drastic counterattack? One thing became clear in those days. The conflict had reached a new level. It was no longer simply a matter of marriage or separation. It was about control, narratives, and to whom the next generation of Windsor would ultimately be accountable. When an internal decree was sealed at the Royal Court of Clerks at 9:45 a.m. on February 6, 2026, it was finally clear. This was no longer an ordinary custody battle. Prince William had activated a rarely used passage of the Royal Family Custodial Sovereignty Charter, the Guardianship Protocol of 2026. This placed Archie and Lilibet under the direct joint guardianship of the Crown, represented by Prince William, Catherine, Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge and Princess Anne, at least until a comprehensive psychological and legal evaluation. This step marked a dramatic escalation. The Royal Guardianship Protocol had already been in effect, but now it involved a formal transfer of responsibilities. The basis for this was repeated evidence of uncoordinated travel plans, including a reserved flight from Vanias to Dubai on which the children's names were allegedly pre-registered. In connection with outstanding school matters and internal branding documents, the palace spoke of a threat to institutional stability. Princess Anne, who had acted as a central figure since the beginning of the crisis, convened an extraordinary meeting of the Royal Household Child Welfare Committee. In addition to Prince William, representatives of the Royal College of Pediatrics were also present. The assessment was unequivocal. The children should be placed in a controlled, therapeutically supervised environment. Catherine, Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge was assigned an active role in their emotional integration. Simultaneously, diplomatic action was taken. A formal notification was sent to U.S. authorities via the British consulate in Los Angeles. Sir Malcolm Bentham coordinated the legal arguments, citing the 2017 Royal Hairstreath. Additionally, a British-American Joint Custodial Intervention Order (JCIO) was filed, a measure last used during the Cold War to protect diplomatic minors from international removal. For Meghan Markle, staying at home meant a drastic restriction of her freedom of movement regarding her children. Her planned participation in an interview in Los Angeles was overshadowed by the announcement that visitation rights were temporarily suspended. Legal observers pointed out that repeated failure to comply with virtual check-ins and international business trips during school hours were considered a breach of a previous agreement. Sherry Tilden responded with a counter-offensive, speaking of institutional overreach. But within a few days, further internal documents surfaced, revealing a planned repositioning of Meghan Markle as sovereign businesswoman N. The term Project Emancipation dominated the headlines. There were also hints of a possible rebranding initiative featuring stylized drawings by the children for a wellness line, a detail interpreted at the palace as renewed commercialization. Meanwhile, Prince Harry remained conspicuously reserved. Since his visit to Clarence House, he has made hardly any public appearances. Speculation ranged from a voluntary withdrawal for mental stabilization to strategic consultation under the supervision of Princess Anne. In fact, he had waived his exclusive custody rights through a declaration signed in January, in order to expedite the proceedings. This step was now being used as the legal basis for activating the protocol. Behind the scenes, Duchess Sophie and Lady Louise Windsor were working on a transatlantic safeguarding review. Lady Louise Windsor was preparing her report. Windsor heirs under a transatlantic safeguarding review, while Duchess Sophie acted as a neutral mediator between the bodies. Prince Edward provided logistical support, particularly with security coordination. Media reaction was divided. While some commentators spoke of a necessary intervention, others accused Prince William of increasing his power under the guise of child protection. However, the facts revealed clear institutional unity. King Charles, who was keeping a low profile for health reasons, had already granted Prince William temporary acting sovereign authority in December. This decision now had its full effect. With the formal activation of the guardianship protocol in 2026, the conflict escalated to a new level. It was no longer simply a matter of individual misjudgments or media misunderstandings. The question at hand was whether a modern monarchy is prepared to act decisively when it perceives that its minor members are being subordinated to strategic interests. Was this step a necessary safeguard, or a sign that the House of Windsor prioritizes maximum control in times of crisis? And what would the long-term consequences be if Archie and Lilibet were to grow up effectively under institutional care? The answers to these questions were soon to follow, as the next stage of escalation was being prepared behind the scenes, one that would affect not only custody but also the inheritance of the title and the very affiliation with the Crown. While the Crown mobilized its institutional levers, Meghan Markle increasingly found herself at the center of a media backlash. What began as a legal defense transformed within days into a battle for narratives, credibility, and international reputation. Observers spoke of a period of isolation, not only politically but also publicly. The trigger was a series of leaks, allegedly originating from within digital project structures. Among them was an internal strategy paper entitled Project Emancipation, intended to position Meghan Markle as an independent, globally active entrepreneur, deliberately detached from family obligations. Combined with travel plans for Dubai extending well into 2026, this created the impression of a shift in priorities, which was sharply criticized. Adding to the controversy was a leaked flight manifest dated February 6, which identified a private plane from Venice to Dubai with pre-registered passenger data for Archie and Lilibet. Although Meghan Markle stated that it was merely a business pre-booking, the Royal Household Child Welfare Committee used this detail as justification for a stricter interpretation of protective measures. At the same time, commercial partners came under pressure. Paris Fashion Week withdrew a previously confirmed invitation. Several fashion houses signaled their distance. In creative leadership meetings, Meghan Markle was described as a reputational risk, according to internal chats. Even international media outlets, which had previously been favorable towards her, now adopted a much more sober tone. Sherry Tilden attempted to reframe the proceedings in California as a matter of age-related equality. However, legal experts pointed out that dual citizenship, in conjunction with sovereign agreements like the Winegrowers Accord, creates a special legal situation. The Court of International Family Law Cooperation confirmed the application of a hybrid jurisdictional framework, which significantly limited Meghan Markle's options. Behind the scenes, Princess and remained steadfast. In Sandringham, a British education and care plan was finalized, providing for the gradual integration of Archie and Lilibet into a structured environment. Catherine, Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge publicly visited a therapeutic children's centre in Windsor, images that were interpreted on social media as a symbolic counterpoint to the accusations of commercialization. Prince William, meanwhile, intensified his diplomatic efforts. The British-American Joint Custodial Intervention Order, JCIO, was registered concurrently in Washington, D.C., and London. MIF legal advisors worked with British consular officers in Los Angeles to ensure continuous, non-invasive monitoring of any potential travel movements. Duchess Sophie and Lady Louise Weiner served as operational liaisons. While Meghan Markle publicly portrayed her position as a fight against neo-imperial overextension, the view that it was a necessary safeguard gained traction in the United Kingdom. A poll showed that a clear majority in Britain, Canada, and Australia favored a structured guardianship solution. Even in parts of California, the prevailing opinion was that stability had to take precedence. Prince Harry himself remained largely out of the public eye. After his visit to Clarence House, he was not seen in public again. Speculation about his whereabouts, ranging from Scotland to a private retreat, remained unconfirmed. In effect, however, his legal submissions and his willingness to cooperate with Princess Anne and Prince William had supported the institutional approach. Amidst this dynamic, the role of King Charles once again came into sharper focus. Although he was not appearing in public due to health reasons, it was known that he had temporarily delegated the acting sovereign authority to Prince William. This delegation now proved crucial, necessitating swift and coordinated decisions. Public opinion was polarized. While supporters of the monarchy spoke of an act of assuming responsibility, critics accused Prince William of strategically acquiring power. Yet beyond the emotions, a clear trend emerged. The institutional unity of the House of Windsor proved more powerful than any single PR offensive. At the end of this fourth section, a pointed question arises. Did Meghan Markle underestimate the dynamic that arises when personal branding strategy clashes with centuries-old state structures, and will she succeed in countering it legally, or was her media isolation already the decisive turning point? The next development already indicated that it would not stop at guardianship and protection protocols. Behind closed doors, a document was being prepared that could permanently redefine title, heirship, and affiliation with the Crown. By the morning of February 10, 2026, it was clear that the conflict was no longer confined to courts in California or internal meetings in Windsor. What unfolded was a geopolitically charged interplay of diplomatic constitutional law and strategic power consolidation, with Prince William at the center of operational control. In the early morning hours, an extraordinary conclave convened at Windsor Castle. Princess Anne presided, and Prince William took his seat in his capacity as acting sovereign. King Charles participated via a secure video link. Members of the Privy Council, representatives of the Royal Household Legal Office, and independent constitutional advisors were present. The central question was how far the Crown could go without provoking international tensions. The previously submitted British-American Joint Custodial Intervention Order, JCIO, had already triggered diplomatic reactions. In Washington, D.C., legal bodies were examining its compatibility with U.S. family law. Simultaneously, Sir Malcolm Bentham had circulated internal instructions regarding the sovereign protection classification of the Windsor minors. Behind the scenes, it became clear that the case wasn't just about the child's welfare, but also about setting a precedent. Should Meghan Markle succeed in circumventing British protective mechanisms in California, it would have long-term consequences for all royal descendants residing internationally. The monarchy was facing a test of modern sovereignty. Meanwhile, Sophie Duchess intensified her coordination efforts with British consular officials in Los Angeles. Lady Louise Windsor acted as a liaison to educational and psychological specialists. Prince Edward discreetly provided support on security matters. This orchestrated cooperation demonstrated that the House of Windsor was not acting in a fragmented manner, but rather in a strategically coordinated way. At the same time, Meghan Markle attempted to reduce the proceedings in the California family court to a purely national level. Sherry Tilden argued that American citizens were not subject to the hereditary codes of foreign monarchies. However, the Court of International Family Law Cooperation reaffirmed the hybrid nature of the case. Archie and Lilibet's dual citizenship, along with existing Windsor agreements, made a clear rejection difficult. Internally, there was also a reference to an agreement signed in 2020 by Meghan Markle, which allegedly stipulated compliance with the Windsor Custodial Monitoring Protocol. Should these clauses be legally binding, her room for maneuver would be significantly reduced. At the same time, the media tone shifted further. Leading international media outlets increasingly reported on runaway titles and royal children as pawns. The debate moved from emotional partisanship to structural analysis. Is a modern monarchy permitted to intervene in transnational family conflicts when its institutional integrity is at risk? Prince Harry remained conspicuously silent during this period. He had not appeared in public since his visit to Clarence House. His role had transformed from that of a rebellious outsider to a cooperative partner within a coordinated state structure. Observers interpreted this as a conscious decision not to further fuel the escalation publicly. At the heart of all the deliberations, however, was a document known internally as the Instrument of Total Dissociation and Disinheritance. Princess Anne presented it at the meeting as a legal last resort. It contained 6 key points, including the revocation of titles, disinheritance, clause activation, and the permanent transfer of guardianship to a neutral royal authority. The implications of this instrument were historic. Even Edward's application of the Iron Curtain had not resulted in such a comprehensive institutional separation. King Charles had signed the document. Prince William was prepared to ratify it. Thus, the monarchy faced a decision that would have not only familial but also symbolic consequences. Was this an act of necessary self-defense or a demonstration of power in an era where transparency and individual rights are gaining increasing importance? And would a complete break strengthen the Crown's reputation or provoke new criticism? One thing was certain: the conflict had long since transcended the level of personal accusations. It now concerned fundamental questions of modern monarchy in the 21st century. Sovereignty, control, and the balance between tradition and globalized reality. The final decision was imminent, and with it the question of whether Prince Harry and Meghan Markle would be permanently excluded from the institutional structure, or whether there might still be a last chance for a reversal. On February 10, 2026, at precisely 9 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, the decision was made that definitively redefined the Sussex chapter within the monarchy. In the secluded atmosphere of Windsor Castle, the document, known internally as the Instrument of Total Dissociation and Disinheritance, the Sussex Protocols, was read aloud. Princess Anne chaired the meeting, and Prince William signed in his capacity as acting sovereign king. Charles participated virtually. What followed was a legal dissolution. The document stipulated the complete revocation of titles for Prince Harry Markle and their children. It was based on the Sovereign Titles Act and the Succession Reform Protocols of 2024. Additionally, a disinheritance clause activation was invoked, referring to a coded document from 2021 attributed to Elizabeth. This meant that Prince Harry and his children lost all claims to hereditary and ceremonial rights associated with the crown. Crucially, the custodial overruling provision was also included. Referring to the Windsor Accord's child protection provision, formal responsibility for Archie and Lilibet was transferred to a neutral royal authority. This role was assumed by Duchess Sophie of Edinburgh. This established the institutional protection structure permanently, at least until the children reached adulthood or until a comprehensive reassessment. Furthermore, the document confirmed legal action against the Archewell Foundation for alleged financial irregularities and unauthorized use of royal insignia. The Privy Seal and the UK Charities Commission were to oversee the dissolution. A public statement clause authorized the palace to disclose all necessary facts to maintain institutional integrity. Perhaps the most symbolic section was the so-called Final Sunset Order. Prince Harry was given 3 days to remove all title references from business, legal, and public platforms. Failure to do so would result in asset freezes and parallel legal proceedings in the United Kingdom and the United States. 12 Uhr GMT veröffentlicht der Palast eine nocturne Erklärung. Sie betonte Pflicht, Verantwortlichkeit und Vertrauen als unverhandelbare Prinzipien. Innerhalb weniger Minuten verbreitet sich die Nachricht global. Von Los Angeles bis Daily analysierten Kommentatoren die Tragweite. Viele Beobachter stufen die Maßnahmen als Beispiellos ein. Meghan Markle reagiert nicht unmittelbar öffentlich. Umfeld sprach von Rückzug und Neuorientierung. Prince Harry wurde am selben Tag am Flughafen Heathrow gesehen mit zurückhaltender Mimik und ohne Begleitung. Aber in das Vereinigte Königreich zurückkehrt, blieb zunächst unklar. Prinzessin trat am Abend in einer seltenen Videobotschaft auf. In militärischer Uniform unterstrich sie die Notwendigkeit der getroffenen Entscheidungen im Sinn nationaler Stabilität und des Kindeswohls. Ihre Botschaft war klar strukturiert und sichtbar Emotion, ein Zeichen institutioneller Geschlossenheit. Prince William und Catherine Duchess of Cornwall in Cambridge Hilton sich öffentlich Zurich. Doc Bilder aus Windsor. Die Catherine im Kontakt mit jungen Familienzeiten. Wurden als Stills Signal de Kontinuität gewertet. Prinz Edward und Lady Louise Windsor blieben in ihren Koordinationsrollen aktiv, während Sir Malcolm Bentham diplomatisch Rückmeldungen sammelt. Damit war der Bruch Volkswagen. Aus einem Sorgerechtsstreit war ein Verfassungsrechtlicher Einschnitt geworden. Die Monarchie hat entschieden, nicht zu moderieren, sondern zu handeln. Prinz Harry, einst Symbol einer modernisierten Krone, stand nun außerhalb der institutionellen Struktur, die mitgestellt hat. Doch trotz aller formellen Endgültigkeit bleiben Fragen offen. Wird die vollständige Dissociation langfristig als notwendige Stabilisierung in die Geschichte eingehen oder als Übersiegen Machtdemonstration? Wird Meghan Markle juristisch nachsetzen oder einen strategischen Neuanfang und welche Identität werden Archie und Lilibet entwickeln, wenn ihr Zugehörigkeit zur Krone neu definiert wird? Feststeht, das Haus Windsor hat ein Grenz gezogen. Die Ära der Sonderregelungen scheint beendet. Was folgt, ist ein Phase der Neuordnung für Prinz Harry, für Meghan Markle und für eine Monarchie, die im 21. Jahrhundert ihre Autorität neu austeriert. Die Geschichte ist damit nicht abgeschlossen. Sie hat gerade erst ihr endgültig Form angenommen und ihr langfristigen Konsequenzen werden erst die kommenden Jahr offenbaren. Der unterschriebene Custody-Deal vom Februar 2026 entwickelt sich binnen Tagen zu einer der dramatischsten Krisen in der modernen Geschichte des Hauses Windsor. Prinz Harry berief sich auf das Royal Guardianship Protokoll und leitet juristisch Schritte ein, die Meghan Markle unter erheblichen Druck setzten. Prinzessin und Prinz William aktivierten institutionelle Schutzmechanismen, die von der Einfrierung von Passen bis zur formellen Vormundschaft reichten. Internationale Abkommen wie der Windsor Accord und der Royal Hair Treaty verliehen dem Konflikt eine diplomatische Dimension. Duchess Sophie, Lady Louise Windsor, Prinz Edward und Sir Malcolm Bentham spielten operative Schlüsselrollen. Während Meghan Markle juristisch gegenhielt, verschob sich die öffentliche Wahrnehmung zunehmend zugunsten einer strukturierten institutionellen Aufsicht.